Many engaged couples or recently married couples have the question, how long do I have to wait after my marriage to get a green card in the United States? Obviously, it's a super important question. There is some law behind the answer, and there's also some strategy behind what the answer is for you specifically. So we're going to talk about all of that right now in today's video. The first thing to understand is that getting a green card through a marriage to a US citizen is not an automatic process. Sometimes I run into people who are under the misconception that once they marry a US citizen, they've already done what they needed to do from an immigration standpoint, or that something else is going to happen automatically because the government must realize that they've married a US citizen. However, that's not how the process works. You are married under one of the states of the United States, and that's under state law, and the immigration system is a totally separate system that you have to make an application to in order to start your process. So the first important point is nothing happens unless you make it happen, and now we'll talk about whether or not you should make it happen or wait longer. Perhaps a more common question is whether there is a legally mandated wait time. So do you have to wait a month or a year after you marry a US citizen to begin your case? And fortunately, the immigration laws do not have any mandated wait time. So you can literally get married in the morning. If you can get your marriage certificate that fast, you could turn around and submit your application that afternoon. There's no specific time that you have to wait. And it works the opposite way too. It doesn't matter if maybe you've actually already been married for decades and you never filed anything. You could always start the process if you wish. However, just because you can legally file your case at any time doesn't mean it's actually a good idea for you to do that. So there are a few different things you definitely want to take into consideration when you're figuring out the best timing for you and your partner to do the application process. First of all, you're going to need to figure out whether you actually meet all of the legal requirements that are in addition to just being a married couple. So some people are surprised to find out that there are immigrants married to US citizens who actually legally still can't get a green card. So you need to figure out in your particular case whether you meet all of the legal requirements, and if you don't, then that would be something to resolve before you begin the filing process. So what kinds of legal requirements am I talking about? Well, there is a long list in the immigration laws of things called grounds of inadmissibility. It's a long list of all the different types of problems that an immigrant can have in their history that can prevent them from being able to qualify for a green card. The most common grounds of inadmissibility that I tend to see immigrants facing in their cases have to do with things like a prior criminal history, either in the US or in a foreign country, or prior US immigration problems, like maybe you accidentally overstayed a visa in the United States, longer than the time period that was allowed, or you've been deported, or you've entered unlawfully, things like that have been problems in your immigration history. There are also health-related concerns, addiction-related concerns that can come into play, as well as literally probably hundreds of other things on that list of grounds of inadmissibility. But so first of all, you need to make sure that you're legally eligible and you aren't facing any of these grounds of inadmissibility. If you do have grounds that you're subject to, then there may be a way to overcome them, and that's, we have other videos talking about that, but you want to make sure that you are eligible or that you can overcome any problems that you have before you start filing. Next, you need to make sure that you actually have all the documents you're going to need to file. So it's one thing to be legally eligible, and it's another thing to prove on paper that you meet all those requirements. So this involves things like actually getting your marriage certificate. So you might be married, but there's usually a little bit of a lag time between when the state will actually issue your certified marriage certificate to prove you're married. So you actually do need the marriage certificate. You each need things like, the long form versions of your original birth certificates or certified copies, identification like current passports. You also need a lot of evidence to prove that your relationship is legitimate. So you'll have evidence that prove things like the fact that you live together, maybe you're on a lease together, maybe you own a home together, or pay your bills together, file your taxes, that you vacation together, things like that. So you need to make sure that you can show both the legal aspects and the relationship aspects on paper in order to be able to start your case. Some couples actually strategically wait to file their application until they've been married for a little bit longer time because they believe that their application will have a better chance of being accepted if they wait longer. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes I actually recommend that in cases where a couple maybe had a really short amount of time dating, they married quickly, and they were just very recently married. And the reason that that could be a problem is that immigration is looking for red flags that someone may be in what's called a sham marriage, meaning that they're not married because they love each other and want to live together, but they are wanting to just get a green card and do it quickly, and they don't actually care about each other and plan to live together. So to prove that that's not your situation, there are ways to sometimes prove it with a quick courtship, short dating, and a quick marriage. But sometimes your chances will definitely go up if you prove that you were living together for a longer period of time and you had more documentation that you were a true married couple with a bona fide relationship. So sometimes if you just don't have good evidence to begin with, or it hasn't been a long enough time, even though legally you can file for your green card, you may decide to wait until you have a better track record that you can show immigration so that they don't feel suspicious about your case. Other couples may have been married a long time, but they just don't have the kinds of documents that they would need to actually prove that they have this ongoing relationship. So sometimes I see that in cases where maybe a couple is living in someone else's house, so their name, it's not like they have a joint lease with both names on it, their names aren't maybe even on the bills, maybe they don't really use social media, and there's just not a lot of ways to prove on paper that they have been living together. So they might decide to wait until they get into a slightly different living situation. Maybe they get their own place. Maybe they find other ways to prove their relationship, but they wait until they have enough substantive evidence to actually prove that they are a married couple that deserves to get a green card. There is one small potential advantage that some couples have that they receive from waiting a little bit to file their marriage-based immigration case, so I definitely want to cover that as well. The advantage has to do with part of the immigration law that says that if you receive a green card through a marriage at a time when the marriage was less than 2 years old, so before your second wedding anniversary, if you got your green card before that date, then you also are going to have to go through another process called removal of conditions 2 years after getting that first green card. And the removal of conditions process is basically another application, another government filing fee, and a lot more relationship evidence proving that you've continued to live together and be a married couple during those first 2 years of having the green card. So for couples who, when they do their green card application and it's approved after they've already been married for 2 years, they don't have to do removal of conditions at all. The government considers them already to have been married long enough to kind of prove their point. They don't have to do that extra step. So in that way, it can save them a little bit of money, a little bit of hassle, and that can be nice. However, when people are considering delaying their immigration case simply because they want to avoid removal of conditions, a lot of times when I talk them through that decision, they realize, actually, that doesn't make sense in our case. Because if you think about it, one of the great parts about getting through your immigration case faster is that the immigrant will gain the ability to work lawfully in the United States. And typically, once you begin working, you're going to quickly earn more money than what it will cost you to go through the removal of conditions process. So generally, I don't recommend waiting just for that reason. But if you're kind of on the cusp, and you could just wait a couple more months and that would make it likely that you don't have to go through removal of conditions, well, then it might be worth it. And if you want more detailed information about all things related to marriage-based green cards, other types of green cards and visas, and the U.S. immigration system, please visit my website link where you can see my online courses and also schedule a consultation if you'd like direct legal advice.